And we are live. Welcome to the second episode of the Blue Mug Chat, and my blue mug is right here. It takes courage to live a human life, and we all have it to varying degrees. For some, it's buried deep in their psyche, and for some, it's a bright light that guides them through every step. My today's guest, Tarini Pal, has chosen to live a life of courage, to live a life of grit, and to live a life of resilience. And I'm so privileged to have her unfold her journey on this platform with all of us. Welcome to the show, Tarini.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for starting this show because I don't think I would have had a platform to share otherwise.
Yeah, the pleasure is totally mine. Before we get on to the questions, a brief introduction for Tarini. Tarini is a full-time MBA student at the University of Hong Kong. Before moving to Hong Kong, she was based in Mumbai and working as an assistant director, script supervisor, and a Bollywood actor. So, you know, so again, on to you, Tarini. Let's get on with the show. I'm pretty sure the viewers are really waiting to hear from you. Share with us what is it that you went through, Tarini?
So I guess I should start from the beginning. So just to give everybody a sort of like timeline or time frame, I'm 30 years old right now. But about 8 years ago, when I was 22, I left India to study again. I mean, for the first time, this is the second time that I left to study. So I went to the US, I went to film school. And halfway through my first semester at film school, I was sexually assaulted. And that was a trigger for me to fall into clinical depression. And because of that, I had to drop out of the program. So I came back. This was, I think, at the end of 2012, basically. And for the next 6 months, I basically went through a severe depressive episode. And I know that there's been a lot of awareness that has been spread recently about depression and the symptoms. So I won't spend too much time, going over all of them. But basically, I felt really low. I didn't talk as much as I used to. And obviously, I guess the major symptom was that I was suicidal for those 6 months. And after that, so yeah, this lasted for about 6 months, and then after that, I got out of the depressive episode, and I think I was mentally stable for about a month or two, which is when the onset of my manic episode began. And so I know that, a lot of people aren't that familiar with mania or the symptoms that, come along with mania. But basically, some of them were, I had racing thoughts. I would talk a lot. I didn't sleep that much. I was basically all over the place. And yeah, I guess the most severe symptom was that I was delusional, in that I specifically thought that I was a spy, and I told people that I used to work for Raw. So it's just anything that you'd see. I mean, the way that crazy people are portrayed, in the movies. And so that manic episode lasted for about 5 months, and then I sort of came out of that episode, and so now we're already, I think it was in 2014. So yeah, I was 24 by then. So I came out of the manic episode, and ever since then, I mean, for the past 6 years, basically, I've been episode free.
Uh, so basically, the assault that you went through triggered your depression. You went into a severe state of depression, and that was you said in 2012, and
Yeah.
from right 2012, and then from the state of depression, you went into you was being a bipolar, right? Is
Yeah.
So the depression actually caused you to be bipolar, and okay. Um, when
So it's not. sorry, I'll just clarify. It's not, I mean, it didn't cause me to be bipolar. Just like digressing a little bit, there are many causes for bipolar disorder. One of them is, and I think that this cause actually of mental illnesses in general is very ignored for some reason, but genetics can sometimes have a huge role to play. In fact, I think about like 70 to 90% of people who have bipolar disorder do have some sort of history of mental illness in the family. And so I think with me in particular, that was probably so. What happens is that with people who have bipolar disorder is that it usually it manifests itself in like early adulthood. So with me, for example, the disorder manifested itself when I was 22, which means that it was always latent within me. It just never it never came up. And so it's not so the depressive episode didn't cause me to be bipolar, but it was just at that moment in my life, the disorder decided to manifest itself. But the sexual assault was the trigger for the disorder, sorry, to manifest itself.
Okay. So, uh, when when you realize that 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 assault has actually triggered this in you, was the acceptance easy? Was it easy for you to accept, or there was still some kind of a denial as to why me?
Um, I think initially I was obviously very confused as to what exactly was happening with me because I never experienced it before, and I honestly hadn't come across anyone who had sort of experienced it before either. So I would say that I was quite confused, but I obviously knew that something was off. When I decided to come back to India, I think that's when I sort of like really realized that I was going through a depressive episode because, like I said, I was suicidal. Basically, I think at my lowest point, I probably went and bought like 30 sleeping pills. I never took them because I sort of read about how like it may not work and you have to get your stomach pumped and all of that. But so once I started to have suicidal thoughts, that was when I obviously realized that I was going through depression. When I came out of depression and I started to experience the initial symptoms of mania, again, I was confused. I didn't exactly know what was going on. But by then, I think I had become a very self aware person. And so I did a lot of research on my own. And I kind of, guessed that I might be bipolar. And I remember, going to a couple of my friends and my family as well, and telling them that, look, I think that this is, what's the issue. Um, I don't because my symptoms were not that severe at that point. I don't think I was taking it very seriously. So yeah, so at that time it was kind of like it wasn't so much that I was in denial. I feel I don't think I was really in denial, but I think a lot of people around me sort of thought that like I was just overreacting. But it's only when my symptoms became really severe, where it was like very obvious to everybody around me. Was it then obvious to everybody else that yes, like I do have bipolar disorder.
So it looks like for you, acceptance actually came very early on, which is in itself is a very big step forward because a lot of times, with the mental illness, there is a sense of denial in the person who's going through it. So and because of that sense of denial, you're not open to accepting any help. So that's I mean, it's amazing that you did your own research and you came to your own conclusion that you might be suffering from bipolar. So when you are, bipolar, I guess there are two aspects of it, right? One is an external diagnostic symptoms that must be going through, but then there must also be something that you're going through internally as a person, suffering from that. What were the external symptoms, and what is it that you were actually feeling, while going through that whole episode?
So the external symptoms, like I had described earlier, while I was depressive, I barely spoke. I was very like untalkative. I mean, yeah, untalkative. I was suicidal. I just withdrew. When I was manic, I was the complete opposite in a sense. I was all over the place. I was very like, over energetic, would speak really fast. A lot of my friends, in fact, when I was manic, I think were under the impression that I was on recreational drugs because they had never seen a manic person before. And like I said, I was delusional. I thought I was a spy. So those are like that's the symptomatic side of it. In terms of how I felt, I would say that it's obviously again because this is not something that people really speak about openly. I did feel really alone because somehow I did actually know one other person who has bipolar disorder, and I would actually hang out with him a lot because we were the only two people who kind of like I guess were on the same wavelength. But yeah, it wasn't. It was yeah. I guess I felt really alone because I didn't know, and you feel like you obviously end up feeling bad for yourself in the beginning because you're like, why me? And like, everybody else in my, or like, just for example, like, oh, okay, fine, I know that like there's a history of mental illness in our family, but why do I have it? Why doesn't my sister have it? Or like, why don't my cousins have it? So obviously, like in the beginning, you do it's. I think those kinds of thoughts are inescapable. But obviously, like once you get through it, or like at least when you're out of an episode, then it's much easier to look back at everything in hindsight and be like, okay, this happened. And the thing is that like after once I was episode free or like once I regained stability and started to speak to people openly about it, then I started to find out that there are a lot more people who actually have the same issue. It's just that we don't speak about it. And so I feel a lot more comfortable now speaking about it because I know that I'm not the only person in the world who has it. Uh, yeah.
So it looks like there was a phase where you actually felt lonely. Did you actually feel that you wish there was more acceptance in the society? You wish there were people who you could talk to openly, because this is one thing that we still face. That it's still a big stigma that we don't talk about it. So I
Yeah.
guess somewhere you felt that too, right? Like I wish there were more people I could talk to.
Yeah, yeah. No, certainly. I mean, I think I was lucky enough to have a pretty strong support system. I mean, compared to like again, like I said earlier, like now I know a lot of people, right, who have bipolar disorder and who have had to go through episodes as well. And when I speak to them about their experiences, it doesn't sound like they had as strong support systems as I did. So it definitely was nice to have, there was my partner who I was seeing at the time, my family, like not just my parents and my sister, but even my extended family, my grand aunt and grand uncle, who are like in their 70s, but they're still probably more accepting than some people my age. And, a large circle of close friends. And actually, what surprised me was that it wasn't just my friends who were sort of there, but their parents even. A lot of the times, like some of my friends weren't even in town, but I would just land up at their houses and their parents would be there and would be accepting. So I think in terms of, I think I had people to look out for me. I don't think that was the issue. I think it was more, I felt lonely that that I didn't know anybody else who was going through it. Because what happens in with like mental illness in particular is that you might have a strong support system, but then your support system tells you what to do, and not even like as an orders you like you have to do this or you have to see this person or take this. And it's I don't think anyone. And it's I mean again like not I'm not trying to sort of cast blame or anything because I honestly don't know how I would have reacted, if I was it was the other way around. Like if I knew somebody who was bipolar, like I probably would have reacted in the same way. Now I think I react differently because I've been through it personally. But yeah, I think uh, the main reason that I felt lonely or sort of yeah, or that I had nobody else to speak to is because I didn't know anybody who had gone through it or was going through it at that particular point of time, except that one friend of mine. And so I think that we would the reason we both would speak to each other is because nobody else really got it. So
So, how does the family deal with it? Because, being a parent, I can tell you that there is no bigger suffering for a parent than seeing a child suffer. So, how does the family react to it? How do you how does is there a shift in the dynamics, or how do you deal with as a family?
right. I mean, again, it's probably a better question for my family than for me, but I suppose I can tell you as much as I know. Obviously, everybody reacts to it in different ways. It's not like it's a uniform response from everybody. Some more so than others, but certainly I know for a fact. And again, this is only something that I've realized in hindsight, is that it's very difficult. There's no lying and saying that it's easy. Again, now because I know a lot of people who are going through it, friends of mine who are going through it, sometimes their parents have called me because they know that I have gone through it, and therefore they've asked me to, try and help their daughter or son. And because I've been able to interact with them, then like I can see how upsetting it is for them. But I think the only way that families can sort of respond in the best way possible is that they have to be willing to accept the fact that, okay, my child has this mental illness and my child can be helped. It's just a matter of taking the right steps. And so a lot of time when I've spoken to parents, they've come to me because they're confused because they don't know what to do. So it's like, what should I do? Like she or he is not listening to me, and that like, should I go to a doctor? Should I? And and so the answer is always obviously yes. I mean, the child does need to go to a doctor. The child does need to go to a psychotherapist. How you address that issue, like, I mean, forcing the kid to go is not gonna solve the issue. So usually, I mean, what has happened with me at least is if when I've spoken to kids in the past, I've been like, look, I have the same problem. I went and did this, and it helped me. So it wouldn't be such a bad idea for you to try maybe. And then they're usually more receptive like that. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. There's no question that it's difficult. But the only way it can become easier is, like I said, if they accept that it's a problem that has to be dealt with. And yeah, I mean, it'll help if like families are more open about it because people wouldn't have come to me and asked me for help if I wasn't open about it, for example. So the more open people are, then if something happens to you, then you're like, okay, I know who to ask for help, or I know who's gone through this before. Like, let me speak to them.
Right. We have a lot of viewers watching this, and I'm going to read before I go on with my questions. I'm going to read their comments because I think they're so heartening.
So,
Mm, uh, Manik Singh is saying, "Come on, Tarini, so proud of you."
okay.
Then there's Malika. I know Malika is your sister. Such a brave
Yeah.
and a mature girl. I completely agree with you, Malika. I cannot tell you. Uh, Dash is saying, so proud of you, Tarini. You are a warrior. Pranav Vahi, so nice and so honest. Raghuvesh, very, very inspiring. Chandana Chopra, courageous and inspired. I'm going to go ahead. Please feel free to ask questions if you have any. I will come to your questions at the end of the show, and I'm going to read your comments now at the end of the show. And please feel free to communicate with her, ask her questions, because it's supposed to be an interactive session. Now, so Tarini, in terms of the treatment, all right, did you have to take medication, or did you go into psychotherapy, or did you go counseling, or was it combination of everything. How does that work?
So while I was going through the depressive episode, which happened first, um, I remember that my parents did sort of recommend that I go and see a psychotherapist. But unfortunately, I think with both psychotherapy and psychiatry, you need to sort of like get recommendations to go to good doctors. And I think they were sort of panicking a little bit at the time, and I think just did like a Google search and found like some psychotherapist that they sent me to, who honestly I didn't find that helpful. I saw the lady a couple of times and then I stopped going. One thing that did sort of help me through the depressive episode was the fact that I was running a lot. And that's something that I've kind of always done. Like I've always been a runner because exercise, I mean, it releases endorphins, so there's no bad that can come from it. Um, During my manic episode, I found out later that I was involuntarily medicated with an antipsychotic. And so, to be honest, I still till date, I'm not entirely sure of how the medication was administered to me, but from what I've heard from some of my friends, I think it was mixed with, my drinks or whatever. But the function of the antipsychotic was to basically uh, make my manic episode end as soon as possible. And so I think without that antipsychotic medication, the manic episode might have lasted maybe 8 months instead of 5 months. And so that was the medication that I was prescribed during the manic episode. Once towards the end of my manic episode is when I really went and saw a psychiatrist that I liked. Up until then, my parents had taken me to a couple of psychiatrists who I disliked a lot. And I think the reasons for that were twofold. I mean, the first reason was obviously because I was manic as well, and I just was uncooperative and not listening to anybody. And had I been stable, I might not have reacted so badly. But I think the second reason is also that psychiatrists in particular can tend to be very patronizing with their patients. So they'll talk to you like you're a child, basically, and they'll be very authoritative in that you have to take this medication, like it's the only way forward. And the thing is that, like, because I personally had done so much research on my own, and I remember sometimes, I would throw out like names like, oh, I've looked at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses. I've looked at the, ICD-10, the DSM-4, which are all like the standard manuals that everybody uses around the world. Because I mean, when I do my research, and this doesn't just go for this, it goes for anything, like I'm very particular about it, right? So I won't just go onto a WebMD. And I think that also would throw some of them off, and they'd be like, she thinks she knows everything, whatever, blah, blah. So I reacted very badly to a lot of psychiatrists. But towards the end of my manic episode, I was recommended to go to one who I really liked, actually. And if anyone is watching from Delhi and they want a recommendation, his name is Dr. Alok Sareen, and he practices out of Sitaram Bhartiya Hospital, which is in Qutub Institutional area. And even though I went to him 6 years ago, I'm pretty sure he's still practicing. He's great because he does a lot of like advocacy also for mental illness. And the reason I really liked him was because he wasn't authoritative and he wasn't patronizing, and he spoke to me like I was an adult. And he knew that I had done my research and that I wasn't an idiot. And he very clearly told me, and this is again, it was towards the end of my manic episode, so I was already like on the road to recovery. And he said that if he basically presented two options to me. He said, look, he said, for the next couple of years, in order to prevent another episode from happening, you have two options. One option is that you can be on preventative medication. And so he like gave me the name of the medicine, and and so I on my own always do research about drugs and side effects and stuff. And sometimes when I go to doctors, not just psychiatrists, even GPs, and I'm like, okay, but why this particular medication? Are there any side effects? Again, they'll just shut me down and be like, why are you asking these questions? I'm the doctor. I know better. Take it. But what was great about him is that, like, I didn't even have to ask him. He told me, he said, look, he's like, this is a new medicine. Do your own research. Do your own research on it. And then you come back to me, take some time to think about it. And then you make a call. So he was like, either you take this medicine for the next 2 years and you have to take it every day, or the alternative is if you don't want to be on medication, then you can, you must start psychotherapy. So you must see a psychotherapist weekly at least, and obviously would be cooperative with her, and you have to basically alter your lifestyle. So whether it's exercising regularly, sleeping properly, make sure that you're eating all your meals on time, reducing your intake of alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, any of that kind of stuff. And so he basically left it up to me. He said these are the two options. And I did my research about the medicine that he had, the preventative medicine that he had told me about. And of course, it did have side effects. I mean, like, some of the side effects were like life-threatening skin reactions. And again, like, these side effects are not definite. Like, obviously, there's a possibility that you won't react, but then there is also a possibility that you will. And the reason why I guess I've never really been a fan of medication like this, especially like prolonged use, is because then it can get very difficult to get off it.
Out of
And so, like, I know a lot of people who've decided to go the medication route, and 5, 6, 7 years later, they're still on the medication. Like, they try to wean themselves off it, but then their symptoms will start making a comeback, and then they'll have to be on like some other medication or something. And so I kind of just took a call, and I was like, look, I'm like, forget about it. I'll go the psychotherapy route. And so then he recommended this psychotherapist to me, who was also great. I would love to recommend her as well, but unfortunately, I don't think she's practicing anymore in Delhi. And so I would see her weekly, and she, I mean, aside from hearing me out and giving me instructions or advice, whatever, her main sort of instructions or advice was always pretty much the same as what the doctor said, which is that, look, you have to alter your lifestyle. And in addition to altering your lifestyle, what was really good with her is that she was able to help me identify potential triggers. So, like I explained, I mean, the trigger for my depressive episode was a sexual assault. Unfortunately, I guess there's no way of preventing that except by being really careful. But otherwise, I mean, like, there are certain other triggers as well. Like, there are certain people in your life that can be triggers. There are certain environments that can be triggers. And I think at that point in time was kind of when I decided to move to Bombay. And because I wanted to sort of pursue a career in film. And I think my parents were also like quite worried because I had just come out of my manic episode and they didn't know if I'd be okay, alone in this new city with not much of a support system. But she really encouraged me, and I think she saw that either her or the doctor kind of explained to my parents that it would be the best thing to sort of like let me go. And I think so a huge thing that contributed um, to my stability over the next few years was the fact that there was a change in my environment. Because in my old environment, there were certainly people and that were triggers, and just yeah, the environment in general, I think, wasn't that conducive to my stability. And I think the 5 years that I spent in Bombay actually was really it was sort of like a healing period in my life.
Um, so it looks like you took medication for just your manic episodes, and then you pretty much did a drastic lifestyle change, which actually really helped you, get past that stage, right? And so you said you actually moved to Mumbai, and you stayed there for quite some time. And it appears that you were not completely okay by that time, right? You were still recovering. You were still
No,
undergoing psychotherapy.
by the time by the time I reached, sorry, by the time I moved to Bombay, I was definitely stable. So I think I moved a few months after my manic episode had ended. But I continued with my psychotherapy. So I mean, obviously, my psychotherapist was in Delhi, but we would have chats over the phone. And every time I would come back to Delhi to visit, my family, I would make sure that I scheduled an appointment with her to just, keep tabs on my state, basically. And I think, that's also. So I think the last time I probably continued seeing her or being in touch with her for the next 2 years. And yeah, because I haven't seen her in the last, haven't been in touch with her in the last 4 years. But I think that's also important that, as soon as you get out of an episode, you can't just stop with psychotherapy. Like you must continue, for the next, I'd say like couple of years or so, because it's important to sort of like, prevent, a recurrence of an episode.
I'm really amazed. It must have taken you a lot of courage to take a call of moving to Mumbai on your own after actually getting over your manic episodes. How did you muster that courage to actually just move everything about your life and made that huge change? It requires a lot of willpower. What made you just go for it?
I mean, I think at some level, I knew that it would be good for me if I moved. In fact, I mean, till this date, I still don't know if like I would have been stable for the next 5 years if I hadn't moved. Like, I think the chances of me having another episode would have been higher had I not moved. Because, like I said, I basically needed a change in environment and, in the people around me. Well, I mean, they were all great, but like there were, like I said, there's certain triggers that I knew I didn't want to be around. And so I left and I moved. And although it was a completely new city, two of my best friends were there, and so I think that was a huge help, in this. And they were completely aware of what I had gone through and all of that. And so like I knew that, okay, like worst case scenario, these guys are there. I think that sort of like comforted my parents also a little bit, in the sense that they knew, like, and like these two are like my childhood friends. I mean, our families know each other and all of that. So that was definitely, that was a huge, like safety net, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, going down to it, I knew that like if I didn't go, it would be worse, because I knew what I wanted to do in terms of my career. And if I had stayed on in Delhi and not moved and not tried to make it in film or whatever, then I would have just been resentful, and could have possibly been a trigger for something else. I don't know.
And if there is any message that you would like to give to all of us, what would that message be, Tarini?
Well, I would say, like I told you when we spoke on the phone the other day, as cheesy as it may sound, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think it's really true, because again, like I know we spoke about this the other day, but for everybody else, there are obviously going to be periods in your life that are stressful. I think everybody is going through one right now, with this pandemic, for example, that like nobody predicted. Oh well, I guess Bill Gates predicted it. But anyway, yeah. So everyone's going through this stressful period. I mean, for me, especially, I'm coming to an end in my MBA program, and so I'm looking for a job here where the job market is really not great. A lot of my classmates are going through the same thing, but I think that because of all of the sort of bad stuff that I've had to go through in the past, this is like a piece of cake. I mean, it's hard. Like, I mean, dealing with the pandemic is not easy. Dealing with this job search is not easy. But anytime I sort of like begin to feel even slightly overwhelmed, I just remind myself of what I went through earlier, and I'm like, it's fine. Like, as long as I'm mentally stable, it's fine. Nothing else. Everything else sort of like pales in comparison. And so I think that that for people who've been through not just mental illness, but any kind of terrible things, whether it be like the loss of somebody, or like could be like a physical problem as well. I think it makes you so much more resilient. And yeah, so that's one message that I'd like to share with everybody. And the second one is that yeah, I mean, it always helps to share. And I know that it's hard, obviously, because there still is a stigma around mental illness, unfortunately, and a taboo around it. But the only way that that can change is if people start talking about it. Because if people don't talk about it, then people aren't gonna sort of like learn more. And I think as we had discussed earlier, also people are not afraid about sharing their physical problems. And unfortunately, I think the reason that people are apprehensive about sharing their mental illnesses is because mental illness is unfortunately viewed as a weakness as opposed to an illness, and it's really not a weakness. It is an illness that needs to be treated. Sometimes there's a chemical imbalance that needs to be addressed. So I think once people start looking at it like that, looking at it as an illness, then hopefully they'll feel more confident about speaking about it.
I'm going to read out the messages now. There are lots of messages for you here. Um, uh, Pradeep Mansukhani, proud of you, Tarini. You now could anchor so many people who are suffering. Your dad, she's the biggest star in our family. Um, Sharda Nayak, it's good to hear you talk about it. There is so much misinformation and ignorance. I know so little myself. In our ignorance, we judge people wrongly. So those are some of the beautiful messages. Very, very inspiring. Proud of you, Tarini, such a brave and mature girl. Well, well, thank you so much for being the voice that counts. Thank you so much for speaking your truth. Thank you so much for the courage and hope that you must have given to so many people out there. I think as a society, the least we can do is accept that the biggest virtue that we can offer as a human being is love, compassion, and acceptance for every individual. Let's lend a ear, let's lend a hand, and that would actually transform so many lives, our lives and lives around us. Thank you so much, Tarini, for being on the show. It was a pleasure. I feel like standing up and giving you a standing ovation, but in the live television, I'll go off the camera. But so touched to have you, with me on my platform. Um, Thank you, viewers, for being there. Till next Thursday with a new story, with a new learning on the Blue Mug Chat, which is right here. This is Jess Sonal signing off, and see you all soon. Bye bye.